could have slept another hour.
We are going to make this episode quick.
I have nothing to say about this movie.
What? You have nothing to say about the classic, the incredible masterpiece that is Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2?
I'm glad you said the title correctly, because I was thinking it was called Blair Witch 2, Book of Shadows. But no, it's Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2.
Let's just start with the title. This, ladies and gentlemen, this episode of Aaron and Justin Talk Sequels, which I'm Justin.
I'm Aaron.
Yeah. And we try to be positive. This is our disclaimer at the beginning of this episode. We try to be positive about the movies that we're talking about because it took a whole team of people to put this together and get it into theaters. It's a triumph that any movie has made ever. But sometimes the movies are bad. Sometimes there's studio interference that makes them even worse.
I think that's what we have here.
I call bad premise and studio interference. I don't think no matter what would have happened, this movie would have been good. We, of course, are talking about Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2, the 2000 film that was rushed. The turnaround was crazy fast. Tell me what you remember about the Blair Witch, because I can remember this pretty well.
I can remember it too. I remember we had a friend that was like, hey, let's go see Blair Witch. It's about that old legend, about the Blair Witch. And they made like a documentary about it or whatever. And so to me, she was talking about it as if the legend was real, but she wasn't sure if the footage was real as they were saying it was. So she wasn't completely convinced, but she definitely believed it was an actual legend. And that was the first time that I really thought about like advertising and marketing. Wow, they actually made people believe that this was something that they didn't just make out of thin air, which is what they did.
It's said to be one of the earliest examples of internet virality, being viral on the internet. And I don't know if it's good marketing to lie.
Yeah.
Because they essentially lied over and over and over. They cooked up missing posters for the actors and posted them all over festivals, made a website. If you think about it, in 1999, I think they say the website was visited like 160 million times. It was a huge number, and considering that back then there weren't that many people on the internet. Yeah, 160 million hits.
I think in this case it was okay to lie. I give them a pass on this one because it was so fresh. And people weren't specific. I don't think they were specifically asking and expecting it to be a lie. So they were trying to get the truth. I don't know how to explain it better than that, but I think I give a pass to this one about the lying.
Yeah, and outside of the marketing and trying to present this info as real, they also are credited with making the found footage genre not exist, but popular.
Yeah. Oh, for sure popularized it.
And I've never been a fan. I have terrible motion sickness, and so like I've always struggled with these. Like Paranormal Activity sticks out just because they had their cameras mounted.
Maybe they thought about that. That was the one thing they were like, well, this movie is a found footage film for people who have motion sickness.
Yeah, without the shaky cam, I'm happy. And overall, Blair Witch, the story was fine.
Yeah, because it's a little all over the place. There were these kids that were kidnapped and then killed. And like they were killed in pairs, so one of them was supposed to like stand in a corner while the other ones were being killed. And then there's another part where there's like 5 men that were killed and then laid out in this weird thing at Coffin Rock. I don't know. So essentially there's like 3 college students that are trying to make a documentary about these kids that got killed, and there's an idea that there's some sort of possession behind it. Like there's a witch who did it. I don't know, but it's like there's apparently a man who killed these kids, so I didn't really understand where the witch even came into it. Since
it is totally made up, they could have made it a little more clear.
Yeah, maybe that's why they just made it up in order to just have like frightening elements, but nobody ever it doesn't seem like they ever really connected them together. But that's the beauty of the first movie, is that you really didn't need to care about that.
Yeah.
It was just what these 3 characters were going through.
Yeah, and so they're lost in the woods. They start losing their goddamn mind, and something is messing with them.
Right. One of them disappears, and then they start hearing him scream throughout the night. But It's only like the second night where they hear it, do they actively try to find him, and then they go to this house. The guy, I think, she gets hit, and the camera falls to the ground. And then you see in that horrifying shot that one of them has their back is standing near the wall.
They're standing
while
in the
other
corner.
one's being killed, and they're like possessed almost. So I thought it was so effective in that movie that they never showed this witch or whatever it is that's killing them. And then that was how the movie ended. And everybody loved it. The critics loved it. It made a gazillion amount of money. I think they said they shot it for around $60,000. But then, like, putting it on the festival circuit and doing things like that ballooned, you know, the post-production up to about, like, $500,000 or something like that. But it still made, like, $300 million or $250 million or just an insane amount of money.
It made a crazy amount of money. And so, yeah. They turned around and the studio wanted a sequel quick. They wanted to make a more traditional movie, but still keep elements of the handheld stuff. So they hire a goddamn documentary filmmaker to make the sequel.
Yeah. Well, here's the important thing is that they wanted such a quick turnaround because of the massive success that, what are the names? Eduardo Sanchez and something Merrick, the two guys that made Blair Witch, didn't want to.
Sanchez, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't want to jump on it that fast. They were like, we can't do that. But the studio just was like, well, if you don't want to do it, we're going to find somebody. So they got Joe Berlinger. And I was familiar with him before I wasn't familiar with him when this movie came out, but I know of him because of the West Memphis 3 documentaries he made, the Paradise Lost documentaries that he made, like one in the 80s, he made one it was like early 90s and then late 90s. And then once the West Memphis 3, which were like 3 guys that were like innocent of this crime they were charged for, and they've been in prison for like 20 years or something, they were finally let go. So he made like a third part about how they finally were exonerated of this crime. It was like a killing of a child or something like that. And these 3 guys were railroaded. Anyway, I was familiar with him as a documentary, so it was a surprise to me to be like, oh my God, he's the one that made the Blair Witch 2. That is so crazy. Because they like you said, they wanted an element of the found footage, so they brought in a documentary guy. But it sounds like he was just like, oh, I didn't want to make that kind of movie. I just wanted to do a traditional film. So it already sounds like they were at odds right at the beginning of this.
And there's interviews with him after where it was like, yeah, that's a different movie. They really made me chop up what I made and turn it into something else.
Sounds like he really wanted to do a psychological exploration and also an idea about how mass hysteria from the media is perpetuated based on what people believed about the first movie. And then when he gave him that cut, they were like, it needs to be gorier and scarier, so go reshoot this, and then we're going to like splice in edits of murder and gore throughout the whole movie, and then they're going to take scenes from the characters' time in a mental hospital, which has nothing to do with anything, and we're going to throw that throughout as well, and then we're going to have like an interrogation scene. We'll just cut that throughout that movie. It was just a mess.
It almost sounds like they made him move it more towards a standard horror film. Like, I feel like there was a much more documentary style.
Absolutely, because they did the one thing that all 90s horror movie did, is they got Marilyn Manson, this post-grunge new metal kind of hard guitar Rob Zombie, White Zombie type thing, and then just like put that all over the movie,
all over,
which is great because I do like those kind of movies from the 90s. I can think of a couple like Stigmata, even the sixth Halloween.
They all
with Paul Rudd,
yeah,
right?
They all started.
Like I there's a place in my heart, but I know inherently that doesn't make them good. It actually may make them bad.
It's so funny how it's dated now. Like, you go back and you go, oh,
yeah,
God, this is so of its time.
Yeah, I can get beyond the nostalgia factor and just be like, this is not put together very well.
Okay, so I've been trying to dissect this movie so that we can just do something other than shit on it, but all I end up doing is dissecting it so that we can shit on it.
Yeah.
So this movie takes place in our world, where the Blair Witch was a movie, and that was really popular. The real city, because in Blair Witch, the city was Blair. In the real world, it's called Burkittsville.
Burkittsville, yeah, Maryland, right.
And so the movie centers on...
Oh, the city was called Blair in the first one? That's where the Blair Witch comes from? I didn't know that.
That's what I was reading in the wiki, but...
I missed that.
But there's even more where it was called Blair, and then it got killed, and then they built Burkittsville over it.
Oh, okay.
Whatever.
It's one of those things.
The concept is supposed to be like, this is Burkittsville, the setting for the original movie that was fictional. We get all these tourists now, and it's annoying.
Well, before I was immediately stuck on the opening title cards that were trying to explain what was going on. I paused it and I just kept rereading it. It said it's a non-fictionalized
Oh my god, I did this too.
Reenactment of events preceding the release of the Blair Witch Project documentary. And I was like, wait, non-fictionalized reenactment. And I just kept reading it because I didn't understand what that was. What does that mean?
Yes, it essentially says this is a fictionalized version of events that happened after. They say the same word twice. It was like fictionalized recreation, something like that.
They said, I think they called it a non-fictionalized reenactment is what I believe is exactly what it said. So I think they're trying to say that it is a real world reenactment
of something.
Anyway, my point was that just immediately set me off on a what? And then I never lost that what throughout the whole movie.
You never lose the what. And then, yes, the main character was in a psychiatric hospital.
But why? And who cares?
Do they do anything with this? No.
Maybe they were trying to say he's troubled, so maybe that'll be a red herring. Like, you'll believe that'll be one more thing to think that he might be the cause of all this.
It's supposed to be a false flag. Do they use it? No, not really.
I guess they sort of do in that we're thinking about it.
I think that was supposed to be something more important. And all right, I'm going to just give you what I think this movie was going to be.
Well, I don't think it was supposed to be important. I think that was one of the studio interference things.
I think it's the opposite.
Oh, you think that was part of Berlinger's original vision?
My guess is that, so this guy's nuts. We're getting told pretty quickly that he's nuts, but maybe this was originally at the end of the movie. Like, so essentially we have this documentary where this guy gives tours and he hires some people, but he gets some people and he takes them on a tour and they go crazy during the middle of the night and they end up killing each other. And then it turns out that he wanted to, because he was crazy, he wanted to study the effects of hysteria on people. So he found these people, he studied them, that's why he had files on them, and then he took them and he drugged them and made them just let themselves be free. And then the surprise twist is that he was actually fucking crazy.
Yeah.
It was in a nut hospital.
And she finds like a file on him in that drawer or something, and it has all of his mental history or whatever, you know. That's how you discover it, and then you see that at the end, that he was actually crazy.
He would have been the bad guy, and then they would have been the victims of what he did.
But also like an accomplice, because he pushed him that far.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or he manipulated the footage to make them believe they did something like that.
Because what we get is, yeah, we know he was in a mental hospital.
Just so you know it. That's it.
Yep. We just want to point out that people with issues, they end up in special places. Anyway, he's out. He's giving tours.
Because, as you said, the town is being overrun by fans of the movie, The Blair Witch Project.
He's making bank on it.
Right. So he has something called the Blair Witch Hunt, where he will take people to the old house or like the ruins of there. I think the ruins he takes everybody to in the Book of Shadows movie is the same ruins that the footage was found.
Yes.
From the first movie. But it's not where the ending of the first movie took place, in that old house.
Oh, yeah, very likely.
Yeah. And then there's also another tour group called like the Blair Witch Walk.
Yeah.
Which comes upon the Hunt group, and they are at odds with each other because they're both trying to make money off this. And so they tell them to go to Coffin Rock or something like that, which is where the bodies of other people were killed.
Yes, something.
Which has nothing to do with the Blair Witch, or it does? I don't know. It was talked about in the first movie, but it doesn't. Again, they didn't need to connect those things in the first movie. It was just there to elicit some more fear, and that's it. But now they kind of have to connect it in the sequel because this is like an actual movie, but they don't do that.
They do a supernatural thing that's not supposed to be a supernatural thing. There's a giant tree growing out of the ruins. Mm-hmm. And the guy is like surprised. He was like, that wasn't here a year ago. It's like 200 years old. It would have been in the center of their house. So they play back the videos and the tree's not there.
Well, it's like a twig. It's like a real tiny one, little sapling.
Yeah. A realistic level or height of a branch growing in the or tree growing in the woods. It's the question of what's reality. Is it only when we're seeing the handheld, and then the not handheld stuff is where they're drugged out of their mind and they are living in fiction?
From the ending of the movie, it makes you believe that all the found footage, handheld stuff, is the reality. And including the security camera from the grocery store.
Yeah, that's supposed to be the reality.
Right.
Yeah, that chick's dead.
Yeah, so he takes the tour group out there to these ruins, and they fall asleep. And when they wake up, one of the guys, Steven, and his girlfriend, who's pregnant, they're doing something. They're making a report on mass hysteria. So he has all his files with him for some reason.
He's a doctor. It's supposed to be his thesis or whatever.
He's like Peter Venkman or something. He's some sort of, I don't know, maybe Ray Stantz or whatever. And then there's another girl who's like a Wiccan, which is like a religion that popped up last century. It's like a quasi. I read a little bit about it. It's more like, they don't have like a centralized thing. It's just people that. So some of them are like, oh, we're just like Earth people, and then some are like, we worship. It's not like the devil necessarily, but there's like a horned god, and then there's an angel, whatever. And I don't know. It's just a bunch of fucking bullshit.
It's just another bunch of bullshit.
It's just a fucking bunch of bullshit. So, and then she's there because she feels that Wiccans are getting a raw end of the deal because Blair Witch is making them out to be like the old-fashioned witches. And she's like, I'm just a woman, a child of the leaves and the flowers. That's all. So that's why she's there. And then there's another goth.
Yeah.
Who's just a goth for goth's sake.
But she has...
Oh, yeah, that's right. She has like psychic abilities.
But she only has the psychic powers, I believe, in the stuff that's shot and not the handheld stuff.
You're right. So they wake up, his files, his report on hysteria is shredded, and it's everywhere, and the cameras are all destroyed because what's his name set up all the cameras, to document their night. They find the footage, even though the cameras are gone, and it's buried in the same place that the original footage was apparently found in the first movie. So they go home. And that's the last time they're in the woods, really, right?
Last time.
So that's already a very big difference from Blair Witch, is that they're not in the woods anymore. They're just in this compound that this guy owns, which would be pretty fucking sweet to have that compound.
Yes, that'd be amazing. It's worth noting they leave because the dude's girlfriend is having a miscarriage.
Oh, that's right. She had a miscarriage. She was all bloody, right?
Just one of those things where she openly talks about how she doesn't want to have the baby, and then gets super hammered and then has miscarriage.
Yeah. So, they go back. She's all messed up because she lost the baby, but she also seems just really wigged out. And then they're looking at the footage, and there's like 4 hours of missing time. And then the movie very slowly unravels what's going on. And they all just get visions, right? They all just have weird visions. And one of them, the Wiccan, is like, we came back with something, we're possessed. But where does that come from? Because where does that come from?
Well, the biggest thing is there's no witch. It was a thing from a movie.
Yeah.
And so them being possessed is nonsense.
But even in the original movie, I never really understood the witch part about it, because there were those two separate murders. There were the children being abducted and murdered, and then there was the Coffin Rock murders where people were laid out in a certain pentagram-y shape or something like that.
I think it was something...
Apparently there's a witch that comes into play here. Who was the witch?
We're talking old school Salem witch trial stuff, like where this town decided this woman was a witch, dragged her out into the woods, and I think killed her. Yeah. And then she haunted them, is what they say.
Okay. But she's not the one that killed she wasn't the one that killed the children, though. It was like some man named Reuben or something, or Rustic.
The important part of what you're saying right now is that was from a movie by two guys that exists in this world, and they made that all up. None of that was real.
Well, see, I don't know if that's... that might not be true. The sequel may believe it to be a movie, but it still purports that it was a real documentary that people want to pretend didn't happen, but it actually was.
See, that would be fun if this movie lived in an alternate universe where the Blair Witch movie was based on fact.
I was watching the movie like they knew it was fact, but the residents didn't want to believe it. So the sheriff is like, get out of here, there's no witch, blah, blah, blah. He's all mad, but shit did go down that was documented in that city, but they don't want to believe it. That's what I was taking this movie as.
They need to, if they spelled that out, this would be a better movie.
So you're saying this movie knows it's fake, but when these people went out to that area where it was shot, they actually did get possessed by something.
Yeah, that's why the movie's bad.
That's why the movie's bad, you're right. I was just thinking that they were possessed by the same thing that happened in the first movie, and now they've got it, because they also didn't want to believe that it was real, but it actually was. But never in the first movie did any of this stuff happen to those characters. So I was like, so now they're being possessed in this way and they take it with them, and like, who is there a witch? I don't know. So then they all believe Tristine, the one who had the miscarriage, is actually now possessed by the witch.
Yeah.
And she's causing them to all think they're crazy, and like the Wiccan gets killed. Tristan's boyfriend ends up hanging her. She wants him to, but he does it anyways.
Yeah.
And they all just get fucking weird.
Arrested.
And the dialogue's bad, and they're all just hanging around this place, and they see things that don't exist but do exist. I don't know.
So the end of the movie is they all went crazy and they killed the people on the rock during those 4 hours. Then they got all naked and fucked each other and were on drugs.
Yeah. Once they finally discovered the footage, the lost footage.
Yeah.
And all he had to do was, like, I don't know, rewind it a little more.
Yeah.
They played it
just
backwards.
forgot to rewind.
I don't know. Oh,
God. It's just, they did it all. And they were crazy and out of their minds.
Right. And they're being shown the footage at the end by the police, I guess.
Yeah.
And then they're all just like, well, that's not how it happened. That's not real. And then they're like, well, cameras don't lie, was basically what they're saying. If it's on video, it's true. So they are a bunch of murderers. How about that sheriff? Man, was he bad.
Yeah.
He just had the most ridiculously cliched lines.
Yeah. It was just what am I trying to say? It's that small town sheriff you see in every movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
he
was like, we want you to rip him off. Yeah.
So I knew Jeffrey Donovan just because he has an interesting face, and I was like, oh, that's the guy from that Burn Notice show.
Oh yeah, he's gone on. A couple of them did some work, but I don't want to highlight it because they were in this movie and they should have been banned from Hollywood.
He's the only one that went on to really do anything worth even mentioning.
The goth chick has a filmography in there, but okay, so they were all crazy. Why did some of the crazy ones decide to turn on the other crazy ones? Why did they kill those two? Why wouldn't they have all turned on each other?
What came over them? What possessed them?
Drugs. And it was marijuana. Marijuana did it.
You blew my mind, though. So you're telling me they made a movie about reacting to a movie that was completely false, but then they ended up getting possessed by maybe something else that they're also calling the Blair Witch, and that's what this movie is about.
The idea is they fell victim to the mass hysteria.
So they're not being, but they had things.
They were cutting that shit into themselves.
But like at the end, but when the goth chick was in the police department, she didn't have it on her body anymore.
Oh, so it's just they imagined that too.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that this is actually a film about mental illness and how if anyone has a mental illness of any kind, they are dangerous and will kill people and should be locked away. That's all this is. There's no supernatural anything to this movie whatsoever.
Yeah, no. This is a movie they show in schools to highlight the danger of the mentally ill.
Of being friends with someone with a mental illness. That's a brave film to make.
Yeah, it was brave of them, yeah.
I took it as the first movie was believed to be fake, but nobody wanted to, or was real, but nobody wanted to believe it. And then the same thing that possessed them out in the woods was brought back by them to their compound, and it slowly drove them crazy. But your take on it is also completely what it could be as well.
Because, like, if they're going to have the original movie exist in the movie as a movie, they need to either spell out that it's not reality or spell out that it is reality.
Yeah. One of them should have went like, oh my God, it's not just a movie. It's real. That would help.
Yeah. Or if they had a piece where it was like, they did the marketing campaign like the kids disappeared and then said it was fake because it was freaking people out. What they didn't tell you was that it wasn't fake.
Yeah. And they weren't actors that were auditioned for this role. They were actual kids. Yeah, they don't ever talk about that. So
if they did that and then we set the stage,
God,
it helps.
What a crazy movie. It was a slog, as you said. It was real difficult to get through. I was just wanting it to end.
So in 2015 or 16, we thought they did a remake of The Blair Witch, which we don't cover remakes. We cover sequels, serialized storytelling over different movies. Yada, yada. You know what it is. Shut up. Anyway, we thought it was a remake, not a sequel. It turns out that it is a direct remake of the first one. Direct sequel of the first one, featuring the brother of the woman in the first film.
Yeah, right.
I was really upset when I found this because I thought this was going to be a one and done series.
Well, look, here's the thing. We don't have to cover it if we don't want to. We can just move on.
Yes, we do.
Who gives a shit? We could do whatever we want.
No,
but I am slightly
interested
interested in it because it is Adam Wingard, and he's a legitimate horror filmmaker. He did the Your Next movie. He's done little snippets in the VCR franchise. And then he just directed Godzilla versus Kong or Kong versus Godzilla. So he's like big time now, although I don't know if that movie was that great. I can't remember. And an interesting thing when he was talking about the Blair Witch is what the movie's called. They dropped the in projects, which is called Blair Witch. They were asking him specifically, so does this like, you don't talk about the sequel then? And he's like, well, we don't ever mention the sequel. He goes, but this isn't meant to discredit it either. This just doesn't have anything to do with it. So this is just following the brother of the girl from the original. So it doesn't ever have to touch on the sequel at all. So I liked how he said that. Like, he was like, it doesn't discredit it. It can still be its own thing, but we're not worried about that at all. And this doesn't have anything to do with it. It kind of works in a way.
You can't discredit a movie that's about the real world and not the movie.
If it's the way you take it, but I still say that it could very well be they say it's a movie, but they knew it's actually fact. They just don't want to believe it. It could be that movie because they don't spell out either. That's all. That's all I got to say about it. But hey, you know what? This thing made a ton of money. It was like 15 million budget, and it said it made almost 50 million. So it was still a financial success.
Yeah, but yeah, they were hoping for 200 million and they didn't get that.
Oh yeah, it was like 200 million less than the other one, so I guess that is kind of a failure in the production.
I saw Death Note. I didn't see Godzilla versus Kong yet because I haven't.
Right, he did that one too. The Godzilla ones, those are they're just too goddamn long.
I liked
and crazy
Godzilla because they have
the first
Heisenberg.
One had, what?
Say his name.
I don't know what you're talking
because it had Heisenberg in it.
Heisenberg.
I finally remember we're gonna have to. Let's try this again.
Are you talking about Bryan Cranston? Is that his name for Breaking Bad?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know that.
You don't know? Have you not seen Breaking Bad?
Oh my god. Ugh. We've talked about Breaking Bad at least 4 or 5 times too. My wife and I watched like the first 5 episodes, but it just never grabbed us. So we were just like, we just never got back to it. I'm not saying I won't ever watch it someday, but it's never really. I don't really care. The first one I believe has him in it, but I don't think the sequels do.
I think he dies.
Yeah.
What are your final thoughts?
Yeah, I got nothing else.
Yeah, this movie shouldn't be watched by anyone. It should go out of print. There are movies that deserve to be in print that could take this fucking movie's place.
Oh, my favorite horrible line in the movie was when they couldn't find the Wiccan girl, Erica. So they called her father, who was like a minister. So then they're talking to her, or to his like receptionist on the phone. The lead guy is like, "We're looking for Erica. We want to know if her dad knows where she is." And she's like, Mr. Whoever has no daughter. And then he goes, "Oh yeah, I know he like disowned her or whatever because she's a witch or whatever, but we're looking for her." Yeah. It was just the way he said it. And then she's like, "No, he has no daughter." And then he hangs up on her. So it's just one of those other things where like she lied about who she was, or it's like not reality anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, trying to piece this movie together is not worth it because they didn't have a plan.
Yeah, don't ever watch this movie anymore. I don't say that too often, but this thing has little to no redeeming qualities. I can't think. What's a positive thing about this movie? Come on.
It doesn't cause AIDS.
I mean, you can't prove that, though.
I know. I could have. No, that's not something you could joke about.
You go in.
What is a good thing?
You go to the doctor's
about
office, and they're like, "I'm sorry, you're positive for HIV."
It looks like you watched...
And then you go, "Is it because of Book of Shadows?" And then he's like, "What? Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2? Have you seen it? Don't watch it." Anyway. That's another question. Is there a Book of Shadows anywhere in this movie?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. It's like
I read about what a Book of Shadows is like. This is what a Book of Shadows is. If you are a Wiccan and you have a journal, that's your Book of Shadows of anything. It could be of spells. It could be of your thoughts and ruminations on nature. So does Erica have one of those with her at all in the movie? Because I don't think she carries anything.
It's the modern age. So the videos were the Book of Shadows, man.
Oh, okay.
Don't you see?
I see. Yeah. You're probably right about that. That's all I got.
Yeah, I don't have anything either.
Actually, I would like to explain that this is a non-fictionalized reenactment of a Aaron and Justin Talk Movies sequels podcast.
It all started when I was released from the psychiatric hospital.
Yeah, spoiler alert. But we're going to tell you off the top that Justin has actually served time in a mental hospital.
And it turned out not to be a podcast at all.
Yeah. Wait.
In reality, it was a book.
Everything we just heard is not the way it really happened. I'm telling you, this is not how it happened.
This isn't...
You're going to jail, son.
What is a podcast?
You and your fun time friends thinking you'll kick back a couple brewskis in the woods.
This can't be a podcast.
Well, that's now you're going to jail, son.
It happened for real.